Okay, so you've sent us a fascinating collection of notes and an audio recording of a presentation on artificial intelligence, AI, and it seems you're really wanting to get a grip on what feels like a tidal wave of change. It's a lot to process, so let's dive in together and see what's most important for you to understand.
It's clear you're not just interested in the headlines, but in the deeper implications of this technology, how it's already impacting us, and what it might mean for the future. Let's unpack this idea of AI not as a distant threat, but as something we're already interacting with, often without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And the speaker you've been listening to, who mentions he's both a mathematician and an economist, does a really clever thing right off the bat. He focuses on these everyday uses of AI, things we almost take for granted now, to show just how embedded it's become.
Right. Like, remember when you first realized you could just describe an image you wanted to a website and it would just like generate it?
Oh, yeah.
Or how about when you started using your phone's camera to identify a product you saw in the wild and instantly get prices and buying options?
Yeah.
That's AI at work, even if we don't always stop to think about it.
He even played a clip of AI generated music during the presentation. It wasn't exactly like gonna win any Grammys,
Right.
but it was surprisingly catchy.
Exactly. And that's the point he's making. AI isn't this mysterious force off in some lab somewhere. It's powering our recommendations on streaming services, guiding our cars with navigation apps, and even changing the way some companies interact with their customers. It's practically everywhere.
Okay, so then he jumps into some pretty mind-blowing real-world examples of AI in action. He talked about this AI-generated pop star in Korea, like a fully virtual celebrity with a huge following. And get this, remember that latest Indiana Jones movie?
Yeah.
Turns out they used AI to de-age Harrison Ford for some of the scenes.
Wow.
It's wild.
And that's where things start to get really thought-provoking, you know?
Hmm.
Because these examples, from AI-generated news anchors to virtual influencers, raise questions about authenticity in the digital age.
Hmm.
What happens when we can no longer distinguish between what's real and what's been created by an algorithm?
Right. Like, how do we know what to believe anymore? It's almost like we're living in a science fiction film. And it's not just about celebrities and special effects, is it?
Not at all. The speaker dives into some potentially unsettling territory with something called deepfakes. These are AI-generated videos that can make it seem like someone is saying or doing something they never actually did.
Okay. Now that is both intriguing and a little terrifying. It feels like this technology could be used in really unethical ways.
And that's exactly the kind of critical thinking this AI revolution demands. The speaker highlighted how deepfakes could have huge implications, particularly when it comes to things like spreading misinformation and influencing public opinion. It's a stark reminder that as AI becomes more sophisticated, so do the potential risks.
It's like we've opened this Pandora's box and now we have to figure out how to manage the consequences.
It definitely feels that way sometimes. But remember, this is why your deep dive into this topic is so important. The more we understand about AI, how it works, and the potential benefits and risks it poses, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this new landscape.
Mm.
And, you know, speaking of navigating this new landscape, the speaker then dives into something I know you're particularly interested in based on your notes: AI's impact on jobs and the future of work.
Yeah, this is where I started to feel that little knot of anxiety, you know?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about AI generating like funny memes or composing elevator music.
Right.
It's quite another when you hear about it potentially changing the entire landscape of professions we've always considered, like skilled and secure.
Absolutely. And the speaker really doesn't shy away from that. In fact, he directly compares AI capabilities to human intelligence across a whole range of skills.
And he wasn't just talking about robots replacing factory workers, which has been a concern for a while. This was different.
Exactly. He was talking about things like language processing, complex problem solving, even emotional intelligence areas we often consider distinctly human.
Right. He even mentioned AI passing the bar exam, medical licensing exams, not necessarily to replace lawyers and doctors outright, but to work alongside them, assisting with tasks that require like huge amounts of data processing and analysis.
And that's where it gets really interesting, this idea of AI, not as a job killer, but as a powerful tool that can augment human capabilities.
Mm.
The speaker argued that instead of fearing this shift, we should focus on adapting and developing those uniquely human skills that AI, at least for now, can't replicate.
So, what exactly are those uniquely human skills he's talking about, and how do we even begin to like cultivate them in a world where the goalposts seem to be constantly shifting?
Great questions.
Hmm.
He emphasized things like creativity, critical thinking, adaptability, and complex communication skills that require emotional intelligence, cultural awareness, and the ability to navigate nuanced social situations.
So it's not just about learning to code or becoming a data scientist. It's about honing those inherently human qualities that can't be automated away.
Precisely. He used a really interesting analogy. He compared this shift to what happened during the Industrial Revolution. Back then, machines took over many manual tasks, but it also created new opportunities and entirely new industries that required uniquely human skills. He believes the same thing will happen with the AI revolution.
That's actually quite reassuring, but it still feels like a lot to process, you know?
Right.
How do we prepare ourselves and future generations for a world where the very definition of work is changing so rapidly?
Well, the speaker actually offered some concrete advice based on his own experience. He talked about the importance of embracing lifelong learning, of constantly updating our skills and knowledge base. He even admitted to using AI tools to help him write his weekly newsletter, but not to replace him entirely. He sees it as a collaboration.
Oh, wow. So he's using AI to help him with his work, but in a way that actually enhances his own skills and expertise.
Exactly. He emphasized that the goal isn't to become overly reliant on AI, but rather to understand its strengths and limitations and figure out how to leverage those to our advantage.
So it's about finding that balance, embracing the power of AI without losing sight of what makes us uniquely human.
You got it. And a big part of that, he argues, comes down to developing what he calls anti-fragility.
Okay. Now there's a word I've heard thrown around a lot lately, but I'm not entirely sure I understand what it means.
It's a really fascinating concept and one that's incredibly relevant in this context. Essentially, it means not just surviving change and disruption, but actually thriving in the face of it. Imagine a bone that actually gets stronger after a fracture that's anti-fragility.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that applies to this whole AI revolution. It's not about resisting change, but learning to adapt, evolve, and come out stronger on the other side.
You've got it. And the speaker offered some really practical tips for cultivating this anti-fragility. He emphasized the importance of embracing experimentation, of being willing to step outside our comfort zones and try new things. He also talked about the power of building strong networks and communities, because navigating change is always easier when we have a support system in place.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels like we're all in this together, figuring things out as we go. And you know what? That actually makes me feel a bit better about the whole thing.
Me too. Because remember, while AI is undoubtedly powerful, it's still just a tool. Ultimately, it's up to us to decide how we want to use it, what kind of future we want to create, and what role we want AI to play in that future.
So we're talking about AI as a tool, but it feels like it's also forcing us to ask some really big, almost philosophical questions about ourselves, doesn't it? What does it mean to be intelligent, to be creative, to be human even?
It's true, isn't it? And these aren't just abstract questions for philosophy professors to ponder over dusty books. They have real world implications for how we educate the next generation, how we design our workplaces, how our societies function. It's pretty huge when you think about it.
Yeah. It's a lot to wrap your head around. And speaking of big questions, one thing that really jumped out at me from my notes was this concern about AI and its impact on democracy. That feels like a bit of a minefield.
It absolutely is. And it's something the speaker in your recording touched on as well. He used the example of deepfakes. Again, the ability to create such realistic but fabricated videos, and how that could be used to spread misinformation during elections, manipulate public opinion, or even incite violence.
It's frightening to think about how easily people could be misled, especially in our current information ecosystem where it's already hard enough to discern fact from fiction.
Exactly. And it highlights the urgent need for what the speaker called informed vigilance. We have to be more discerning consumers of information, question our sources, and be aware of the potential for AI to be used in ways that undermine trust and transparency.
So it's not just about understanding how AI works, but also about thinking critically about how it's being used and who stands to benefit or potentially profit from its deployment, which, let's be honest, is a whole other can of worms.
You're hitting on a crucial point, the ethical considerations surrounding AI. In your notes, you highlighted a few articles discussing the rise of AI ethics as a field, and this is something the speaker brought up as well.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? If AI is going to be this transformative force in our lives, we need to ensure it reflects our values and is used in ways that benefit humanity as a whole, not just a select few.
Precisely. And that requires a multifaceted approach. It means having open and honest conversations about the potential risks and benefits of AI, developing ethical guidelines and regulations for its development and deployment, and empowering individuals with the knowledge and skills to navigate this new landscape.
You know, it reminds me of that moment when, like, the printing press was invented. It must have felt like the world was being turned upside down.
Right.
But it also led to this incredible explosion of knowledge and progress.
That's such a great analogy.
Mm.
And it speaks to the fact that while AI presents us with challenges, it also offers incredible opportunities for growth and innovation. Just like the printing press democratized knowledge, AI has the potential to democratize access to information, healthcare, education, and so much more.
So where do we even begin? How do we ensure that AI is used as a force for good, not just for profit or power?
The speaker offered a few concrete starting points. First, he stressed the importance of education, and not just for, kids in school. We need to demystify AI, make it accessible to people of all ages and backgrounds, and empower them to understand how it works, how it's being used, and how they can shape its development.
Kind of like what we're doing right now with this deep dive, breaking down complex information into like digestible chunks and having these important conversations.
Exactly. And beyond education, the speaker also emphasized the need for collaboration. Technologists, ethicists, policymakers, business leaders, artists, everyone needs to be involved in shaping the future of AI. This isn't just a tech issue, it's a human issue.
It feels like we're standing at the edge of something truly remarkable, something that could fundamentally reshape our world in ways we can't even fully grasp yet.
We are. And it's both exciting and a little bit daunting, isn't it? But as the speaker so eloquently put it, the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we create. And with AI as a tool, as a partner, and perhaps even as a mirror, who knows what we might be capable of achieving.
Such a great point to end on. This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've explored a lot of ground today, from AI's everyday applications to its potential impact on our jobs, our democracy, even our very sense of what it means to be human. It's clear that AI is not some distant threat, but a powerful force already reshaping our world. But as we've discussed, the future of AI is not predetermined. It's up to all of us to engage in these critical conversations, to approach this technology with informed vigilance, and to ensure that AI is used to create a future that benefits all of humanity. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.